So here we have a market structure that you probably haven't heard of. It is called oligopoly. Now you've probably heard of something called monopoly, and that's one firm, but an oligopoly is like a few firms, okay? So we've got a few firms in charge here, and it's known as an oligopoly. First thing, as I just said, this is what makes it an oligopoly, is that it has 10 or less firms in the market. So if you look through the market, you're just going to find a few firms, maybe up to 10 or less, and there's really not anyone else producing these products. So that's part of the market structure of an oligopoly. The reason for this is that there are high barriers to entry. Okay? So because there's high barriers to entry, there's not as many firms in the market. And what really defeats the purpose of getting into the market is that the products are similar to identical. If you have similar to identical products, then it's really, why would someone try and get into that market with a high barrier to entry? So a few do, a few make it, and then they become entrenched, and they're really the ones who like run that market. Okay? So with an oligopoly, you've got these three attributes, and because they are similar to identical products with those high barriers to entry, you end up with 10 or less firms in the market. For example, if we take a look at cola, we're going to see that cola, I know a lot of you will argue this one's similar to identical products. I'm sure some of you swear that you can taste the difference between Coke and Pepsi. I think one of them has like a little bit more sugar than the other. But if you look on the back of the can, the formulas are the same. Okay? So these are similar, certainly, if not identical. Colas are generally the same thing. All right. So we look at cola, we're talking about Coca-Cola and Pepsi and RC, and you say, well, all the Shastas and all that stuff, we've talked about that in the other video. Coke has like 75-80% of the market. It's a huge part of the market. It's mostly just Coca-Cola. And then the next one is Pepsi, and then a tiny little bit is like RC Cola and those Shastas and Safeway Select and Fred Meyer brands and things like that. And you know where Fred Meyer's and Safeway bottle their stuff? They bottle it at a Coca-Cola factory. Fred Meyer's doesn't have its own cola factory. They just rent the Coke factory. They put their formula through the machines. They label the cans with Fred Meyer Select, and then they put it on the shelf. Okay, it's Coke. So you have just a few products out there, and in the cola industry, that's really it. All right. If you took a look at another one, tennis balls. I used to be tennis coach at the Dalles for a while, and we always had the same tennis balls out there. You know, you could get Penn, Wilson, Dunlap, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay? And so what they have to do is put a number on the ball because it's always the same label. Everyone says, I got a pen 3, a pen 4, you know what I mean? Because they're just the same. Think about it. They are identical. They have to be identical because you're not playing with a legal tennis ball if you're doing anything that's not identical. So they are by definition exactly the same. And so because of that, there's high barriers to entry, and you only get 10 or less. And in the case of tennis balls, I only think there's like 5, and I can only name 3 right now. So, yeah, that's what you got. You've got these firms with this set of market conditions, and so they behave in certain ways because of this. It's not that these firms do these things because they want to. It's they do these things because they have to. Just like in perfectly competitive markets, in monopolistic competition, now in oligopoly, they behave the way they do because of the market structure. This is how they need to operate in order to survive. So let's take a look at that. First off, you have non-price competition. These groups don't compete based on price. No one says we've got a sale on tennis balls, come on down. Or hey, you know, on the pricing ads, Coca-Cola, it's 99 cents instead of $1.19 from Pepsi. They don't do that. You will never see a Coke commercial that has a price in it. Ever. They will do the same thing as monopolistic competition, though. They will brand the products quite a bit. So if you think of Coca-Cola, you're going to think of those happy commercials with the polar bears and the family and looking at the stars in the Arctic and drinking a Coke. So happy. All right? They want you to have those happy feelings when you think of Coke. Even though polar bears? What does that have to do with Coca-Cola? Nothing, except happy feelings. All right? So you will see massive advertising in this area. Tons of advertising, and it will not be focused on price. It'll be focused on branding. And so they don't compete based on price. They compete based on feelings. How many ads can I create that give you a feeling of goodness when you look at my product? What they do practice is something called interdependent pricing. So what'll happen is each time one of them prices the product, the others in the industry will price their products in a similar fashion. And they're constantly looking at each other. In fact, people from Safeway will go to Fred Meyer's every day and write down the prices with their gun. They'll take a little electronic signature of it, and they'll figure out the prices at Fred Meyer's. And there's someone from Fred Meyer's over at Safeway figuring out the prices over there. And they swap. They do this. They want to know what the other group is doing in regards to prices. Okay? So it's interdependent. They don't ever want to get too far out of line, above or below. They want to move together in little tiny increments. They're always checking each other, and they're being very close together. A classic example of this is gas stations. Gas stations sell similar to identical products. It's gasoline. It has the same octane ratings, and so 87, 89, 91. It is identical. They would love to tell you that it's better gas, and I'm sure some of you out there are like, oh, it absolutely is. Well, you've been convinced because of massive advertising. Or you've convinced yourself because the gas station you like is the one that you've convinced yourself that has better gas, So they're all by state law have to be the same. And because of that, it's a high barrier to entry to put in a gas station. That's very tough, and therefore it's really not that many, is there? I mean, you've got Chevron, Exxon, 76. What else you got there? You've got things like Astro and Fred Meyer's and Safeway, but they don't have oil rigs out there themselves. Exxon is the one that sells them the gas to Fred Meyer's and Safeway and Astro. So, what do you got? Phillips Conoco? Just not that many, is there? So, gas stations, you're going to find that they all have very interdependent pricing. If you look it up, and we can do this in class, look up the gas prices in the Dows, and you're going to find that they're all about the same. And then what you'll find is there's 2 or 3 that are way higher than the others because they're all next to the freeway. So they price based on the freeway, about 20 cents. About 20 cents more expensive. Okay? So that's capturing those people that are on the freeway and don't want to get off and get lost in the Dows. But if you're in the Dows, they all have about the same price. Fred Meyer, Safeway, 76, all of those are about the same because if they got too out of line, everyone would go to the other one. So they don't ever want to lose their customers due to price. So they all are very conservative and they stay about the same. And then one of them will move up a cent. And then the others will be like, should we do it? Okay, we'll do it too. And so they move incrementally and very slowly and very carefully, always trying to stay within a cent or two of each other, right? And so what you'll find is eventually one will develop sort of as the price leader, like who's the firm in the region or town that moves before the others. So who is the first to move generally is known as the price leader. And it could be like, I went to one gas station one time across from another one, and I said, why is your station always 3 cents cheaper than theirs? And they said, because our corporate office said whatever they price it as, we're just going to be 3 cents lower. So They, across the street, are the price leader because whatever they do determines the price of the next door neighbor. But you'll see gas stations across from each other have different prices like that because one is trying to undercut the other. We'll get to that in a minute. But most of the time, gas stations stay right there, about the same. Okay? So, interdependent pricing, they oftentimes have someone who is a price leader that gets very close to what's going on there, and they're the ones that call the shots, and when they move, everyone else follows them up and down. And gas stations are classic. And it could be that what you'll have is a price war. So what they compete for is not based on price. They compete based on market share. So again, think about gas stations. Why do you go to the same one all the time? It's close. It's convenient. It comes with a store, and you really like going to get the Mountain Dew there. You know, it has rewards points that you want to cash in. It feels good to get those rewards points. You have some special membership card. You see, they're always trying to lock you in with something other than the gas because they want to create some brand loyalty, and they want to get you into the habit of going to the same one every time. And you just keep going to the same place, they've always got your business. And so they have that market share, 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever it is. But if they want to make a move and they want to steal market share, they need to excuse me, early. They need to shock people out of their system. So if something is just, 5 cents less, you're probably not going to break your habits. But if something is $1 less, well, now you're going to break your habits and go to that other station. And this is known as a price war. We don't have one in town, but Arco has been a station for years that attempted a price war. And what they did is they charged, 20, 30, 40 cents lower than all the other stations. And they're advertising it, say, hey, we're going to actually use prices now. Come on into our station because Arco's where you got the lowest gas. And so all kinds of people would come into those lower stations and they would change their habits. And then Arco has since slowly raised its price up. Okay? So once you grab market share from those other businesses and you've got those people, you've got a bigger pool now, then you start raising your prices to make up for the losses you had back when you started the price war. Probably some of you do this. When you go to Portland, you'll stop at Wood Village or at Troutdale trying to get the cheaper gas that is not in the Dalles, and you do that before you come home. And for a long time, Arco was like $1 cheaper than the Dalles gas. And so people from the Dalles, when we went to Portland, we'd fill up with gas right there in Gresham, Wood Village, Troutdale before coming home. And some people would bring big oil drums even and fill up because it was so much cheaper. Since those years are gone, the prices have steadily come up. But I bet some of you are still in the habit of making sure that you get a full tank of gas in Troutdale before you come home. Even though you don't need it, it's just that habit of, we got to get the cheap gas that's in Portland, kind of thing that's ingrained in your mind. So that's the idea behind a price war. You're not trying to make money per se, you're trying to steal market share, make your pool of customers bigger, and then raise the price in the future. And over time, you'll then make more money. You could also drive your competitors out of business. Texaco, Shell, these are companies that were weakened by price wars and then were taken over by other companies, and now their market share gets bigger and bigger. So in some cases, oligopolies will turn into monopolies because the big fish keep eating the little fish, and pretty soon you've got just one big company. All right? And in fact, gasoline was one big company back in the late 1800s, early 1900s with Rockefeller. Standard Oil, that was it. There was Standard Oil. It was the best. It was the cheapest. And so that's all there was. No one could compete with them. So a lot of people complained about how that was unfair. And so then they broke it up into a bunch of different companies. Okay, but, just like the Terminator that tends to get blown apart and suck back together, that's what's happening gradually over time. These little companies are just getting devoured by the bigger ones, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're heading right back to company. Okay? So we'll talk about that in the future, laws that maybe prevent that from happening. Are they good? Are they bad? And we get into monopolies later. So, but this is oligopolies. This is their basic market structure. We're going to spend some more time with them because they do some special things beyond what's written here. This is just the basics. They also engage in something called game theory. And it's quite an exciting branch of economics, and we're going to be getting into that in the next few lessons.